Now we can start the program, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, very warm, happy morning to all. Myself, Dr. C. Muniraj, Professor and Head Civil Department. I'm the coordinator of this webinar series on research. Everyone can do quality research. Along with me, Professor N. Sandhya Kumari, Head ECE Department. He is a co-coordinator of this webinar. It is my honor to welcome all for this webinar talk. First of all, I heartily welcome today's webinar talk resource person, Professor N. Balakrishnan, Professor, Department of Aerodynamics, IISc Bangalore. I welcome you, Professor. Thanks for joining with us today. Next, I welcome our respectable Dr. P.S.S. Srinivasan, founder, principal, Knowledge Institute of Technology, Salem. He is the key instrumental behind this 8-day webinar series on research. I welcome you, sir. Thanks for spending your valuable time with us today. I also welcome all our vice principal, all directors and head of the departments. I feel honored to welcome all the participants from the different parts of the India and my fellow colleague for taking a part of this important research webinar. I'm sure that you will all feel enriched with knowledge after completion of this 8-day webinar series event. This webinar series consists of 8 talks. The 2 talks were over by Professor Muthukumar from IIT Guwahati in the topic of instrumentation of research in thermal engineering and the research. The next talk will be going on to deliver Professor R. Jayvil from Anna University and our principal Dr. P.S. Srinivasan sir. The webinar series poster already has circulated among all the participants. The e-certificate will be provided to all the participants for each talk. Before move to the talk, let me take 2 minutes to brief about our college facilities for doing quality research work. Our college mechanical department and EC department is Anna University approved research center, and the EEE department has applied for getting approval. We have so far 7 approved PhD supervisors. So far, we have been produced 20 PhDs. Our college has a good H index values and contribute good number of research publication in peer-reviewed journal, especially in SCI indexed journals. Our principal service specialized in heat transfer. His citation is 969 and H index is 15. He is a fascinating researcher, even though he is busy with administrative work. He will always deliver talk in the series under the topic of my research journey. He is going to share with his research experience. I welcome you, sir.
Yeah, I've been joining.
Yeah, we have more than 10 industry linked laboratories. Apart from our regular academic laboratories, we have a unique more than 10 industry linked laboratories. Our ME MTech students are actively doing their project work in this laboratory and will convert that project work into good research paper. That research paper has been published in Scopus indexed journals also. This year onwards, we will provide the stipend for our ME MTech students with a merit basis for inculcating the research flavor among our MTech students. Thanks for the management giving this kind of permissions. So we have received so far 60 lakh from MSME for promoting the quality product, and we have established a medical image processing center under the head of Professor N. Sandhya Kumari, which was funded by AICD under the RTS scheme. So within our 10-year of journey, we have been achieved significant research and also in student skill development based on 360 training program, which we are provided for all the students. So that we are standing 50 to 60th position among 552 engineering college in Tamil Nadu for analysis engineering admissions. So with this information, I welcome you all once again to the webinar and hope that you will have a great time ahead. So thanks for giving the opportunity. Thank you all. The forum is handed over to Dr. P.A. Gauri Shankar, giving the introduction of the speakers. It's over to Gauri Shankar.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So it's my privilege to introduce Dr. N. Balakrishnan, Professor, Computational Aerodynamics Labs, Department of Aerospace Engineering, Indian Institute of Science. Professor N. Balakrishnan got his PhD from the Department of Aerospace Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in the year 1995. After that, Professor Balakrishnan has joined as a IIT assistant professor in the IIT Kanpur. Again, he rejoined in the Department of Aerospace Engineering, IISc, Bangalore as an assistant professor in the year 1998. He is presently a professor in the Aerospace Department, heading the Computational Aerodynamics Lab and an associate faculty in Supercomputing Education and Research Center. His interests are in CFD algorithms and applications and high performance computing. He has guided 17 research students and over 50 ME theses. He is involved in several research contracts both from within the country and abroad. He has over 100 publications in journals, international conferences, and symposia. His work on unstructured finite volume solvers has resulted in an industry standard CFD solver, which is extensively being used by the Indian aerospace industry. He is also the founder director of S&I Engineering Solutions, a venture company specializing in CFD services. We welcome, sir, warmly welcome. We are expecting your wonderful lecture, sir.
Thank you. I can start right now, right? Hello, are you hearing me?
Bala, 2 minutes. I add few words, then you can start. Okay.
Sure. Okay, right. But I'm audible, right? No.
Yeah, very
Okay.
much audible.
Good.
Dear participants, I'm very happy in talking to you today on this important occasion. Everybody does research, but converting that research into something useful to the society or a larger community is in need of the hour. In fact, many may not aware UDCT Bombay, University Department of Chemical Technology Bombay, they are the very pioneer in industrial consultancy and technology transfer. They earn to the extent of some 200 crores, 300 crores revenue to the institution. They have such a reputation. So, like that, every institution has got a potential to generate revenue through the research. So long back, doing a research itself was considered as a tough journey, but now it has become made mandatory. We have to have at minimum 2 publications in reputed journals. That's the need of the hour. But we can try beyond it. So now it's a day of startups. It's a day of making industry standard research and technology transfer. From that dimension, Dr. Bala has not really thought of making a commercial code, but his research has slowly culminated into that stage. A series of research scholars guided by him. So finally, why not when we have our own Indian solver, computational fluid dynamics solver, on par with international standards, especially for aerospace engineering that involves very huge computational effort, large meshes and other things. So he is a standing example that when we have been doing research fine, but when we do that in a little more structured and focused way, definitely everyone have got a potential to reach that level. So that is the objective of today's research. After that, Dr. Jewel from Anna University will be addressing basic research methodologies for at a beginner level. And I will be addressing 2 talks on, one is on research methodology and another one is on how to start a research and what are all the difficulties we may face, right from topic identification, choosing a supervisor, and then choosing an experimental design, whether it's experimental or computational or theoretical or some combination of this. And if you want to make a good three good publications and one good thesis, what is need to be done, some time management aspects, all those things based on my experience and 15 or 18 super scholars I have guided based on that. I'll be giving a real-time tips. So these are all the four webinars that's about to come. And Dr. Muthukumar is one webinar is pending on general research methodology. With this opening note, today I think Dr. Bala's talk will make us to think in a different perspective. Hope we can definitely do that. With this opening note, over to Dr. Bala for his presentation.
Thanks, Dr. Srinivasan. I think it was a very kind introduction. And thanks also to your team for working behind the scene in getting this kind of a wonderful opportunity available to a very large section of the community. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking on technology entrepreneurship. I think that's key, okay, because I think each one of this word, technology and entrepreneurship, I think these two are important things. So even before I really get started, because there was a bit of a small bit which we had actually missed out in the last talk which I had given, which is on computational fluid dynamics itself, okay, because there were certain questions, what is computational fluid dynamics and what do you do there in CFD and kinds of stuff. We had broadly looked at aspects of research in the last talk. We will very quickly look at some aspects of computational fluid dynamics in this particular talk, okay. And I also realized that this bit of an introduction to the computational fluid dynamics will also sort of become a very natural introduction or natural, not introduction, but a natural way of introducing the kind of entrepreneurship that we have been able to sort of accomplish in the institute. So what I will do, I will share my screen. Okay, I will share my screen, and let's get started with that. Okay. This is not going to be a very elaborate talk on computational fluid dynamics. It's a very simple introduction to CFD. So is the screen, is everybody able to see the screen?
No, sir.
Right?
No, sir, it's not visible.
No, I have shared the screen. It will take a moment, but let's wait and see.
No, it will give a comment. Started sharing. It has not come. You have to share once again. Yeah, it has come. Yeah, fine.
It takes time, a little time, but it shares. Okay, now it has come, right?
Yes, sir.
Exactly.
So what I would request the organizer is that in case if there is a lag between what is being displayed on the in the shared screen and what I am talking, feel free to sort of come in and then remind me that, look, there is something going wrong. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So I think feel free to do that. There is no problem about it. See, I will quickly cover this aspect because it also puts in perspective about the kind of venture company that we have started. Okay. So that's the reason. What is computational fluid dynamics, or popularly what is called as CFD? In fact, when you say CFD, it is generally understood as computational fluid dynamics. And in fact, there are people who say the usage of fluent in CFD has become so much, okay, that it is impossible to look at any calculation in any organization, institution, okay, without fluent. So they renamed it as computational fluent dynamics. Okay, so I think so. Just on a lighter note, so basically, what we are talking about is computational fluid dynamics, right? And what do we do here? We solve numerically the partial differential equations which govern the fluid flow, right? In fact, to be precise, solving numerically the Navier-Stokes equation or its approximate forms on a discrete space and time domain with the help of high-speed computers. This is what is called as computational fluid dynamics. Okay, it can be used in variety of places. As I told, it can, last time I had indicated, it can be in aerospace engineering, this can be in mechanical engineering, this can be in civil engineering, this can be in astrophysics, this can be in biomedical engineering, right? And this, the number of applications that we really have for CFD is so much. Like I'm told that these days, even when people make movies, okay, they use the CFD tools to realistically sort of show the, say, for example, in the movie, they want to sort of, picturize a storm. Okay, they use CFD and then find out what really happens and then try to do it. It has gone to that level. Okay, it almost permeates everything that we do today. And what are Navier-Stokes equations? They are partial differential equations. It typically, whatever the conservation laws that we know of, mass, momentum, and energy, as far as the fluid flow is concerned. That's what we do, right? Okay. So this actually just shows you the Navier-Stokes equation. Okay, so don't worry about it. So these are a set of 5 equations, 5 partial differential equations. They are not decoupled ones, but they are all coupled ones. What it means is that you cannot solve them separately. You have to solve them together. So you have an equation for mass, and there are 3 equations corresponding to momenta, right? X, Y, and Z momentum, and then energy. So that's what we have, right? So these are all, just forget, don't worry about the equation itself. So as long as you understand that there are 5 partial differential equations which are solved with some boundary conditions in CFD, and how we solve it is depicted here. So solution to Navier-Stokes equation subject to appropriate initial and boundary conditions. Anybody who talks about a partial differential equation would know that we have an initial condition and a boundary condition. So you satisfy the initial and the boundary condition. And how difficult it is to solve the Navier-Stokes equation. Okay, leave alone getting a closed form solution to the Navier-Stokes equation. Even proving the existence and smoothness of the solutions for the Navier-Stokes equation, even that is difficult. So these are equations which are not mathematically tractable, okay? Because the moment you give an equation to a mathematician, immediately he will find out whether the equation exists, the solution exists, and if it exists, is it smooth? Okay, these are all the primary checks a mathematician would subject the equation to. So basically, even such an analysis for the Navier-Stokes equation is not possible. And there is a very famous mathematics institute called as the Clay Institute. And this is identified as one of the Millennium Prize problems of the Clay Institute. So this is a problem of the millennium. That's the way they identify. I think there is a huge prize money associated. But actually what's happening is that even 2 years back, this was in use in bits and pieces in some kind of an approximate form of the Navier-Stokes equation. I think people have been now, after a long time, long effort, have been able to look at aspects of existence and smoothness of the solution. Okay. Then primarily till the CFD came into picture. CFD came into picture about 40-45 years before, right? It has been in place for 40-45 years, but particularly in aerospace engineering, it is being used in a big way in the last 20 years after the boom of the digital computers. I think that's the most important thing that we should remember. But otherwise, how people always ask a question whether the Navier-Stokes equations were not solved before that. So how did actually people really fly an aircraft? For example, one of the most beautiful aircrafts that's flying even today is Boeing 747. It's so huge. Okay, I think the size of the aircraft itself is some kind of a. Once you look at the aircraft from a close quarters, you will see that how huge that aircraft is. It comes in 2 tires and all that. Okay, this was designed almost about 50-60 years back, and this aircraft itself has been in place for the last 45 years. Okay, and only now, recently, I think this particular aircraft's production is being terminated. I think even to terminate it will take another 2 years from now. But I'm telling you that this is the kind of technological marvel that has been flying. But when it was designed, there was no CFD. Okay, so there was no CFD at all. So how did they solve the Navier-Stokes equation? So anybody would ask this question. Okay, what did they do in the design of this? So basically, they were using wind tunnel in a big way. And in fact, only one very interesting statement that has been made by a great scientist called von Neumann. Okay, I just want to quote here. In fact, this guy, in fact, he is known as the father of modern computational fluid dynamics, right? And his confidence in the numerical methods way back in 1940s was so strong. I think I'm giving this example to bring out what level of conviction. See, basically, we choose to do something in our life. Okay, how much of conviction that we really have in what we choose to do. Okay, if you want to understand that, this is a great example. In fact, von Neumann says that the purpose of experiments is to replace a computation from an unquestioned theory by direct measurements. Okay, and then he goes on to say wind tunnels are computing devices for integrating PDE governing fluid flow. So, in fact, in 1940s, when even the rudimentary form of computers were not available, von Neumann could see that, look, people are not going to solve these equations so straightforward. It's not going to be easy. And how are they going to solve? They are going to solve it numerically. But he knew that the computers at that point in time were not adequate, okay, for solving the Navier-Stokes equation. And therefore, what he says is that he looks at experiments, okay? He looks at experiments and he says, what is the purpose of the experiments? It is to replace a computation, okay? Replace a computation from an unquestioned theory by direct measurement. So basically, he looks at experiments as a replacement for computation. And he says that, in fact, he calls wind tunnels as analog computing devices. Okay, wind tunnels are computing devices for integrating the partial. So what does the wind tunnel do? It integrates a partial differential equation. I think this is such a beautiful statement. In fact, I always tell this particular statement to my CFD students. This clearly brings out the conviction of that man. And interestingly, almost close to about 80-85 years after he has made this statement, today we really see when there is a boom in the digital computer architecture, the kind of computing power that we have at hand, we are able to see the power of the statement that he has actually made. So it is extremely important, particularly when we are talking about things like the entrepreneurship. It's extremely important that you are completely convinced about what you want to do. Okay, right. So basically, the typical processes that are involved in CFD are grid generation. Okay, where you sort of discretize the computational domain, and then what you do is discretize the partial differential equations. Discretization is a process by which the partial differential equations are converted to algebraic equation, and these algebraic equations are the ones which are solved on the computing platforms. Okay, and generally, typically in a design cycle, what is the kind of inputs that a designer would seek from CFD? In aerospace industry, typically it is forces and moments. In different industries, it could be something like a heat transfer coefficient, surface temperature. It could be very varied. Okay. Typically in an aerospace industry, we are talking about what kind of forces are coming on the aircraft, what kind of moments are acting on the aircraft. So basically, that's what we are really talking about. Okay. Now, this is a example where I'm showing a wing. Okay, this is called as a high lift wing. This is typically used when an aircraft actually takes off or lands. And what you see here is that there is a computational domain that has been identified, and the region around the wing has been discretized. What it means is that it is actually sort of broken up into non-overlapping volumes. Okay, non-overlapping volumes. So basically, the kind of grid resolution dictates the kind of accuracy that you can expect from the computation. These are details. Let's not worry about it. Okay. And solving the equations, Navier-Stokes equations, I think that's very, very important. Okay. When you are really talking about Navier-Stokes equations, they are nonlinear. Okay, it's not just nonlinear. There are disparate length and time scales. You have very small time scale length scales and very large length scales. Very small time scales, very large time scales. All of them together. Okay, so handling such an equation with a nonlinearity is actually not an easy job. Okay, it's not an easy job. So that is where the primarily as applied mathematicians or the people who actually work on the algorithms for CFD, the challenges stem from there. Okay, so the Navier-Stokes equations, of course, we know that it's not possible to get closed form solution, but getting the numerical solution is also not a very, very easy job. Okay. And not just that, even if you have a good methodology for, as I told you, the grid resolution dictates the accuracy. You want accurate design data, and therefore your grid size can be very large. Now, typically, if somebody asks how large the grid size could be, if you look at typically in an aircraft industry, the smallest of the grid size that is used, it could be anything like 20 million or 30 million volumes. Okay, but however, this is not the kind of computation that we are looking for. Quite often, there are computations which may actually demand 1 billion volume. Okay, so a billion volume CFD is also now is a reality. In fact, when I was a student, when I had a 2D problem, I used to be glad if I'm using 10,000 or 15,000 volumes. Okay. Whereas, as I told you last time, my MTech student uses something like 200 million volumes in his calculation. And typically in an industry, you have the calculations which are routinely made from the viewpoint of generating the design data, which has got about 20, 30 million volumes. But again, when I am really wanting very high accurate data, a billion volume CFD is also possible, depending on the kind of the fidelity that you would want to bring in your calculations. Okay. And when I'm saying this, okay, what is important is that when you want to solve such a big problem size, okay, for example, I said there are 5 equations, okay, 5 equations governing the fluid flow. So with respect to, and I convert this equation into algebraic equation. So with respect to each volume, I have 5 equations. So if I have something like 100 million volumes, right, what I have is something like 500 million equations. Okay, so if I'm really talking about a system, a linear system for solving, so algebraically solving, so AX equal to B, what is the dimension of A? Dimension of A is something like 500 million by 500 million. So that is where the supercomputing comes into picture. I think that has to become very clear. So any meaningful CFD is impossible without a supercomputing platform. Okay, I think this also is a very important component which I am going to touch upon from the point of view of the entrepreneurship also. HPC is a must for solving the Navier-Stokes equation. Okay, now what is the need for using an HPC? You want what is the need for doing a meaningful CFD? You should have algorithms which are accurate, okay, because you don't want to compromise on the accuracy. Designer wants accuracy. It has to be robust. You do not want, the people say that my algorithm is very robust, but when I start the algorithm, it may actually blow off after about 1,000 iterations or so. So you have to manually sit in front of the computer and then keep on sort of fudging the input data that it does not blow off after about 1,000 iterations. That's not the kind of CFD you are looking for. What you are looking for is a robust CFD, right? So a methodology should be accurate. It should be robust, and of course you have to necessarily solve a large problem size, and therefore it should actually be able to exploit the massive parallelism in the present day computing platforms. There are two kinds of parallelism. One is what is called as what we call as the SIMD, in the single instruction multiple data kind of a framework, distributed memory kind of a parallelism. Okay, I will, as we go, maybe I think I will also introduce, and the other one is the data parallelism. Okay, I will more that goes with the GPUs and accelerators and kind of stuff. I will make a statement on that as we go along, or maybe in terms of question, if somebody asks some question at that point in time, we can also take that up. So algorithm should be algorithms. When I'm talking about a CFD algorithm, the CFD algorithm should be accurate, it should be robust, it should exploit the parallelism, because you have to get your numbers fast enough, right? Because the designer is always at your throat. Okay, where are the numbers for my design, right? So I think so these are all the important aspects that are to be satisfied when you are really making use of CFD. Okay, now when I'm talking about aerodynamic design, now CFD is an integral part of it. Okay, so in fact, you have CFD, from CFD you go to internal to flight testing. Okay, in one of the recent initiatives in our lab, what we have done is we have the flight test data from HAL, and we make use of the CFD, right, to find out because when you actually have, what do you mean by flight test? You have methodologies for estimating the lift and drag experienced by the aircraft. Okay, so now you simulate the flight test and then find out whether the CFD is doing a good job or not. Okay, in order to sort of minimize the flight test, then that's the objective. Okay, now in fact, if this view graph broadly brings out how CFD has evolved. Okay, how CFD has evolved. There are different levels of fidelity, starting from linear potential, full potential equation, Euler equation, which are basically inviscid. Then the RANS, Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equation, detached eddy simulation, large eddy simulation, and direct numerical simulation. Direct numerical simulation is where you completely resolve all the time and the spatial scales associated with turbulence without any model for turbulence. And I think anybody who has done some CFD would know that there are models, turbulence models, which are associated with the CFD. That's what you make use of in a RAN solver, and to different degrees in the other tools like the detached eddy simulation or the large eddy simulation. But this direct numerical simulation is actually model free, even presuming that the kind of boom that we have been actually having in the way the supercomputing capability is progressing. Okay, a realistic estimate tells us that it is not before 2080 that we will be able to solve the so-called DNS equations. Okay, so we may not even live to see that time. Okay, the DNS equations are completely ruled out. So basically, when I'm really looking at a realistic time frame in the next 10 years, 15 years, what is likely to happen is that we are going to have more of what are called as the detached eddy simulation and the large eddy simulation. And again, why I'm emphasizing this aspect is that there may be somebody who would want to really know what is it that they have to do actually in CFD. So these are all the methodologies which are going to rule for the next 20 years, and invariably all these methodologies will make sense only when we are talking about a supercomputing platform. If you don't have a supercomputing platform, none of these things can actually be done. Okay, because aerospace CFD particularly, okay, aerospace CFD particularly is the one which has actually been sort of challenging the developments in the computing itself. In fact, this is something which I made a remark during the 90s. I think any supercomputing platform, it used to be made for CFD. Okay, but to present day, I think it is more data driven. I think we have already talked about it. We will not discuss it again. Okay, now I think these are all details. I'm going to just skip them. Okay. all that I would say is that I'm skipping all of that. Don't worry about it. I think these are all not very important. Okay, I think that's about it. Okay, drag reduction. Okay, fine. So this is a broad introduction, okay, to CFD. As I told you, okay. Okay, so let me stop sharing. Okay, I will come back. So this gives you some kind of a broad introduction to CFD. Okay. And there is an issue.
So give the stop sharing.
Has it stopped?
Not it, sir.
Yeah, I am actually sort of saying stop sharing, but is it not? Is it stopped now?
Yes, it stops, sir. Now it's clear.
Good. Okay. Now, so this is broadly. So, okay. Now, I think people should be having a reasonable understanding of what is done in CFD. Okay. So, things that particularly sort of great interest to me. Number one is algorithms. Okay. And when I'm saying algorithms, what kind of algorithms that I have actually worked on? I have, particularly in the context of the aerospace CFD, which is general enough actually. If you really look at it, it can also go with any other branch of engineering. But my specialization is as such is in aerospace engineering. The kind of algorithms that I've actually worked on are what are called as unstructured mesh based algorithms. Okay, so this could be the aspects of discretization for the sake of better accuracy, for the sake of better robustness. Okay, I think these things I touched upon. Okay, and not just that, I've also worked on what are called as the parallel algorithms. Okay, when I'm saying parallel algorithms, that's again one of my research interests, high performance computing platforms. And what are these parallel algorithms? Right? Essentially, when I'm actually having a large scale problem, I sort of map that problem on a supercomputing platform. How do I do that? Okay, how do I do that? So, as I told you, there are two kinds of parallelism. One is the so-called distributed memory parallelism. So, I break up the problem into smaller fragments. Okay, and each fragment is given to a processor core. I think that's one way of doing it. The challenge here is that when you do CFD, it is not that the fragment, the task associated with the fragment that is being given to a processor core will be independently carried forward, because it's not possible. You have to solve for the entire computational domain, which means that the processor cores should talk to one another. Okay, this is what is called as the communication. So basically, what happens is that if your algorithm is not good, you will end up with what are called as communication bottleneck, in the sense that the communication itself will take so much of time that your code will not show performance. Okay, or if you are not careful enough, you may put a large load on one processor core and very small load on the other processor core. So the other processor core with a smaller load, which will run the code for a short time and then wait for the bigger fellow to complete the job, which means that the waiting times are going to be more. So you do not want either of that. So you need to be careful how you distribute your problem on a larger machine, and also how the processor cores or the processors talk amongst themselves. So you need to minimize the talking. At the same time, you have to distribute it uniformly over the entire computational platform. And the other challenge that could be there is that the computational platform itself may not be a homogeneous platform. It could be heterogeneous, in the sense that some of them could be Haswell cores, some of them could be Cascade Lake cores. So basically, so you can actually sort of talk about a great degree of complexity. This is one way of doing it. And the other way is the present day, at least for the last 6-7 years, people have been talking about what are called as GPUs, the accelerators. Okay, so essentially these GPUs are processors which are made in the context of the graphic rendering. Like if you remember the old movies, the very old movie, almost about 20 years old, I suppose more than 20 years old, the Jurassic Park, when it came into picture, okay, it was first movie, I suppose, where the humans were interacting with the animals, okay, and you don't even really feel that they are that those animals are actually not there. Okay, when the movie was made, they were all actually sort of just a consequence of the graphics these guys have done. So how did they do it? They wanted very powerful graphic processors. Okay, so these processors were made for graphics utilities, but now what has happened is that they realized that these process, in fact, the performance was continuously going up. Okay, Nvidia was sort of leading that entire business of making the graphic processors, okay, GPUs, the so-called GPUs, and they realized that the strength of this processors, okay, can actually be used for computation. Okay, so what happened? So the word data parallelism came into picture. So, for example, if I have to have a plus b equal to c operation, okay, over several thousand volumes. Okay, now one way to do it is that I take volume by volume and do the a plus b equal to c. Okay, but the other way is that if there are about 3,000 cores which are available to me, let us suppose, I pass all these operations through that. So concurrently, each one of these cores will do a plus b equal to c and output c, let us suppose. Okay, so the strength of the GPUs is that they have very large number of cores. Okay, very large number of cores. What they distinguish as many core to multi core, right? In a CPU, you have in the present day CPUs, you have over 60 cores, 64 cores, or something. Some of the more advanced cascade-like kind of Intel architecture, it gives you that. Whereas when you talk about the GPU, you have several thousand cores. Okay, so that is what is called as the data parallelism, as against what I had actually talked about. So basically, now it is not that your machine will have only the CPUs, not just the GPUs. You will have both the CPUs and GPUs, and they have to work together. Okay, CPUs are also powerful, GPUs are also powerful. You cannot just be using the GPUs. If you are doing that, the CPU will be wasteful. But again, you cannot say that I will just make use of the CPUs, because when you use it alongside the GPUs, you get significant speed up. So entire process of building a parallel algorithm is around this. Okay, that's what we have been successfully able to do it in that class. I will give you some examples what we have done. Okay, to just put in perspective. Okay. Now, without this kind of computing capability, it is impossible for you to really think of anything, a meaningful CFD. Okay, a meaningful CFD is not possible. Okay, now I'll just go back and look at what we have done. We have developed a solver called as Hyphen. What Hyphen reads? Hyphen is high resolution flow solver on unstructured meshes. And what is its USP? Okay, USP is that this solver, in fact, we have been developing it over the last 20 years, over 22 years. Okay, USP is that this solver makes use of one of the most recent algorithms, okay, as compared to many of the legacy solvers. When I'm talking about legacy solvers, all the solvers that are there in the commercial space, they were all developed almost about 30-40 years back. But CFD process itself is so complex, they would not really want to go back and revisit, except for doing some tinkering work here and there. Okay. On the other hand, this is a modern solver which works on some of the most recent developments in the discretization methodologies. Okay, so I think that's one of the important things. So this solver is very accurate and very robust. Accuracy and robustness is something that can never be done away with as far as the CFD process is concerned. Okay. Now, in addition, what is its USP? The USP is that it scales over the very beautifully over the supercomputing platforms that we have in the world. Okay, we have used this particular solver on a number of computing platforms. Okay, including the NASA Pleiades. In fact, if somebody had seen the movie Martian, there is a mention of this particular supercomputing platform. Actually, NASA Pleiades. In fact, in the institute, we have a supercomputing KHC40, which is referred to as Sahasrath. There are, supercomputing platforms available with Intel, the Endeavor. See, there are, and there was one available with Computational Research Lab, which was a Tata initiative in Pune. It used to be called as ICA. So over the last 10, 12 years, we have extensive experience of working with some of the the leading supercomputing platforms in the world. And with this experience, I can tell you that this code can scale over several thousand cores. Okay, when I'm saying several thousand cores, what we have used is something like 15,000, 20,000 cores. Okay, easily. There is absolutely no difficulty at all. As against a commercial solver, I do not know how many of you really sort of experience these things, because you may not have really access to such computing platforms. They do not scale beyond something like 100 cores, 200 cores. That is the kind of commercial tools. Name any commercial tool that you have with you. Okay, it would not scale over 100 or 200 cores. Okay. On the other hand, we are talking about development of a code which scales over several thousand cores. Okay, several thousand cores. I'm not getting into the details because they will be too technical. Okay, and just not that. We have also sort of developed this code on GPU-based platforms. Okay, so when I'm running the code, not just on the CPUs, but alongside on the GPUs, I get speedups anything like at present about 2 to 3 times. Okay, with whatever the tool that we have at hand, which is commercially available, the commercial version of the Hyphen, it can give you anything like 2 to 3 times the speed up when you are using the GPUs. And we are working on a methodology where you are likely to get anything like 10 times the speed up. Okay, so for example, if you have something like a workstation with about 32 cores, right? And if you can solve the problem in 10 days, if you just put 2 GPUs alongside, you will be able to solve the problem in 1 day. I'm telling you, this is the kind of speed up that it can give. So we are also looking at this GPU based speed up. So this is the whole bit of a story. So we are talking about a code which is accurate and robust. How do we know that it is accurate and robust? This is a code which we have participated in some of the international code validation exercises. In fact, when I'm talking about this, in aerospace engineering, you have code validation exercises organized by AAA. Okay, I sure people must have heard about the AAA, and we are regular participants in the so-called drag prediction workshop, high lift prediction workshop. Okay, so we know that the code is robust and it's accurate, because these are all blind tests. Okay, where you have to run the code, go submit the data to the organizer, and the organizer will put the data against the experiments, and you would know where your results are. So we have done excellently and comparable with some of the best tools in the world, which are used by organizations like Boeing and Airbus. Okay, so this is the level of confidence that we have. Okay, now this is about the tool. Okay, this is about the tool that we have developed. Then what have we done? We have actually sort of not restricted the tool to lab scale. Okay, it is one thing to restrict the lab tool to lab scale, but it is another thing to really sort of say that, look, we have a tool which is good and I want to commercialize it. Okay, and why do you want to commercialize it? There is a USP associated with it. There are no other tool in the commercial space which scales as well, whereas our tool scales very well. So that's the reason we should commercialize it. Okay, so I think then we started off with the venture company Sandy, that is the simulation and innovation. engineering solutions. That's what our company short name is Sandy. You can go to our webpage, sandy.co.in. You can look at our webpage. You will see a number of examples there in our webpage. And where are we today? Okay, we have actually started with the company almost about, this is almost now 13 years after we have started the company. And where are we today? Now we are part the design. We are part of the design team. Okay, because the design team in the VSSC, Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, they make use of our solver. Okay, the design team in aeronautical development establishment, they make use of our solver. A number of DRDO establishments make use of the data from the hyphen solver. So this is where, so basically we have become some kind of an integral part of the entire defense and space program of the country. Okay, so this is a matter of, actually, I would say, it's a matter of pride for all of us, in fact, to bring a code. In fact, like our Prime Minister is talking about Atmanirbhar. In fact, a very good example for Atmanirbhar is the development of the hyphen solver. I remember when I was a student, okay, when I was a student, and later I think even after I joined the institute, the commercial tools, there were sanctions from the US government, federal government, which prevented the organizations like Fluent from selling tools to our defense establishment, our space establishment. Okay, so but they were lifted later on. That's a different thing, different story. So there was a time when the technology was denied. Okay, on the contrary, now even if the technology is denied, we are not actually going to be losing anything. So, but once this aspect became clear to the federal government, what they did is, okay, fine, we will lift the technology. So that's the way they actually sort of play around with the technology development within the country, and that is the reason why there should be a governmental support and the programs like Atmanirbhar. I think that's very, very important for us to evolve the technologies. Okay, so this is broadly about the CFD, what we have developed in the CFD, and what we are today. In fact, as I told you, this code has become sort of indispensable for many of the aerospace programs. Okay. Now, finally, on the technology entrepreneurship, I want to just make I'm sure that there are several people who are very greatly interested in technology entrepreneurship. So doing research is one thing. Okay. Doing research, when you actually do research, you can feel happy about what you are doing. Okay. Oh, look, I have done this. This is something new. So what drives research is novelty. Okay. What do I mean by novelty? If somebody tells that 2 plus 2 equal to 4, someone else comes and tells, no, it is not just 2 plus 2 equal to 4, but 1 plus 3 is also equal to 4, that 1 plus 3 equal to 4 actually can become a publication. Okay. So what drives research is novelty. You have to do something new. On the other hand, when you are really talking about a product, novelty could be useful. I'm not saying that novelty is useless. Novelty could be useful, but your purpose should be very clear. Okay, if your purpose is not clear, I think your product will not stand the test of time. I think that's very, very important, right? So when we are talking about technology entrepreneurship, what are we talking about? We first accept the fact that we are technocrats. And when you want to go into entrepreneurship, what do you want to do? You want to do technology entrepreneurship, because there are also a number of other entrepreneurships. Okay, for example, if somebody sits in front of a hotel and makes bida, okay, the revenue that he will make, okay, the turnover that he will have, it will be in several crores or several lakhs. Okay, it will be in several lakhs. So it is not about spending money. It's not about spending money. As a technocrat, we are talking about technology, right? You should be very clear about what you want to do. It is technology entrepreneurship. So if you are not a technocrat and you want to do something else, I think that's also fine. I'm not saying that that's not right. But as a technocrat, I'm asking myself, what is my duty? It's to do the technology entrepreneurship. Okay. Now, when I'm actually sort of talking about the entrepreneurship itself. Okay, there are 4M or 5M. Okay, depending on the way you want. The first M stands for market. Okay, first M stands for market. The second M stands for men. Okay, when I'm saying men, it is gender in a very gender neutral sense. It can be men or women, but second M stands for men. Okay, then the third M stands for motivation. Okay, fourth M stands for money. Please note this is the order in which money is important. Fourth M stands for money, and the fifth M, it also stands for market. Okay, so it depends on what you look at. Okay, so you start with the market and end with the market, and that's what is the entrepreneurship. So please keep it in mind that first aim is for market, second aim is for men, third is for motivation, fifth is for money, fourth is for money, and fifth is again for market. This is the way I look at it. Okay, let's look at each one of them. Okay, now I have a technology product. Okay, as a technocrat, I have a technology product at hand. Okay, the product can be very varied. Okay, for example, you can talk of a product which is small but goes everywhere. Okay, where there is huge demand. Okay, give an example. When we are talking about the microprocessors, okay, everybody, if you talk to anybody who has used a computer, you talk about, do you know about Intel? Everybody would know Intel. Yes, Intel. Intel processors, everybody knows, and it is there. It permeates our life fully. Okay, but the reality, if you know, there are what are called as ARM processors. I do not know how many of you would have really heard about ARM processors. Okay, ARM processors, and these ARM processors actually go on all your mobile phones. Not just the mobile phones. There are many other applications, but no mobile phone is without an ARM processor. Okay, now, if you really look at in terms of the volume of production of the Intel processors as against the ARM processors will beat the Intel processor hands down. Okay, the number of so basically what I want to tell you is that you may actually be doing what apparently looks very small, but the requirement is very huge. Okay, that's a technology product. And now, in fact, it has become so much that the ARM processors have become so commonplace. The processors, they are thinking of bringing the ARM processors for computation. It's so commonplace. The processors, they are thinking. I am getting an echo. Okay, so the ARM processors, they are bringing the ARM processors in the computation also. So basically competing with the Intel. Okay, so I'm just giving this example. This is one way of your product could be like this, or else your product could be like ours. Okay, when I'm looking at Hyphen, if you ask the question where you sold thousands of licenses of Hyphen? No, we have not sold thousands of licenses of Hyphen. Okay, right? But we have sold very few licenses of Hyphen, for that matter. Okay, very few, in less than about 100 licenses of Hyphen. Okay, the frequency at which we do business is also very small. Okay, not like, so for example, compare it with the Bida fellow who sits in front of a hotel. He will make business, the frequency at which he transacts a business is much, much larger. Okay, if we transact a business once in a month, that will be great for us. Okay, twice in a month, it's great for us. So your product could be either like the first one which I told, or it could be like this, whichever the product is. It is so basically like, because the frequency of business transaction is less, don't underestimate the transactions themselves. I think that is a very important thing. Okay, so you should have a clarity. What is it? Where am I falling? So why it is required to understand this? Your marketing strategy primarily will depend on this. Okay, primarily your marketing strategy will depend on this. Okay, then so when you actually want to get started with a startup, let's suppose. Okay, first thing that you need to very carefully do is understand the market. Okay, I have this product in mind. Okay, I have this product in mind, and whether I can actually, is there a requirement in the market at all? Or is it just my fancy? Because you can be novel, okay? You can fancy something, you can develop something, whether it has place in the market, whether it has a place in the market. I think that's very, very critical, okay? And for this, you should be completely unbiased, okay? Last time I talked about scientific temperament. You should be, absolutely ruthless with your own thoughts. Okay, you have to be ruthless with your own thoughts. Don't give in to your own fascinations, imaginations. Don't give in. You have to ruthlessly look at the market, whether I have something, whether it will stay in the market or not. You have to make that analysis. So that's why I say the first M stands for market. Okay. The second M is for men. Okay. When you talk about men, it is generally not possible for one individual in most of the technology kind of entrepreneurship, one person. So you have to get into a group. I know the story of K80, which is doing so well. I know how Srinivasan started it. Okay. In fact, he brought people who are like-minded together. I think that's very, very important. It's unless you do that, people who are like-minded. Okay. I have a good story, but in the lack of time, I do not know whether I have to really tell a story. Okay. So you have to get people who are like-minded, who are willing to work, okay, together. And what is the nature of these people? They should be prepared to do some kind of short-term sacrifice. Okay. Please don't look for, money. I start a startup today. Don't expect that you will be rich day after tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Okay. That's not going to happen. Right? You have to have people who are prepared to make short-term sacrifices. I'm very clear in saying that short-term. It's not long-term. It's not forever. If you have to do it forever, don't do it. Don't continue with that venture. Drop it off. Prepare to do for short-term sacrifice. Okay, this is about the men. You have to get such men who are like-minded. In fact, it is always a good idea to get people who have complementary talents. Okay, if I can do X, my friend can do X, my friend's friend can do X, all of us getting together is not going to help you. I should be able to do X, my friend should be able to do Y, and my friend's friend should be able to Z. Okay, I think we are the people who can come together and then build a product. Okay, if you do not complement one another, it is not going to help. And the other thing is that this core group of people who you bring in the initial part of it, as a partner, as an employee, whatever way, they should be sort of prepared to bet their career behind this venture for the rest of the life. That is the kind of high level of motivation. Okay, that's the third one. Okay, that is the kind of motivation that should be there. Okay, in fact, I always like one of the statements Narayan Murthy said. This business of business, okay, is not about how fast you run. It is not a sprint race. It is how long you run, how long you sustain in the market. Come what may, okay, you should be still there in the market. So if you beat others, you beat others by the way of tiring them out. Okay, it is not about I have run very fast and I have come first. The other fellow will overtake you in another 5 minutes and then go off. It is not going to help you. It is about how long you run and not how fast you run. I think just always keep this in mind. Okay, because when I talk to some of the youngsters, okay, they sort of, they're bubbling with energy and enthusiasm, but they miss out this aspect. Okay, the patience, I think that's very, very important. Business is something which is very uncertain. It is like our weather. Suddenly you will find that everything is gloomy and there is a lot of rain and you cannot go out and all that. But after about 2 hours, you will see that the sun is actually sort of shining forth so beautifully and everywhere it is lit up. Neither you should lose yourself when you are going through the depressive moments. Okay, neither you should lose yourself when you are going through the depression or become, you should not overjoy, okay, grow into modes of enthusiasm, spots of energy bursts kind of stuff when there is a sun shining. You should always maintain that equanimity. Well, what Bhagavad Gita says, okay, you should maintain that state of mind, because in business you will have both. You will have very, very depressing days, but you will also have very, very successful days. But you always understand that these things come and go. There is never a business where everything is all right all the time or everything is wrong all the time. That's not so. So how long you run is very important. How long you run. So you beat your competitor not by the way of running fast, but by the way of running for a longer time. Okay. He should get tired by running alongside you. Oh, this fellow doesn't stop at all, so there's no point in running with him. That's the way you should deal with your competitor. Okay, so this motivation is also very important, because I was talking about the conviction in your product. I think that's very, very important. You should be convinced that in the first, when your market survey itself, you are convinced that the product that you have in mind is viable in the market. Okay, that conviction is important. And once that conviction comes, you will have the sense of quality also. That also requires more motivation. Okay, you should ensure that your quality is the best. Okay, it is not necessary. In fact, like I have seen people who tell me that people should support you, the hyphen, because it is an indigenous product. I tell them, please don't support because it is an indigenous product. Support me only if it is better than the other tools which you have in the commercial space, right? So I think that is the sense of quality that should always be there. Okay, never compromise on the quality for whatever reason. Okay, because not compromising on quality also requires great bit of conviction and motivation. Okay, so we have seen the role of market, role of men, role of motivation, right? And then money. Since money is something which is very, very interesting. Okay, very interesting. So, in fact, one of the good examples that actually I can give is money is like your shoes. I think please understand that it's like your shoes. If the shoe is too large, you are likely to fall. If it is too small, you will end up with shoe bite and you will not be able to walk. It is to be to the size. Okay. Why I am saying this is that these days, particularly these days, you have people walking with suitcases waiting to sort of support the newer initiatives. Okay, so if you have a good idea, it is possible to get money. It's not difficult. It's possible to get money. If you have a good idea, it's possible to get money, right? And if you, but only one distinction that I would say is that generally, as an entrepreneur, okay, don't venture into the market with your own money. Okay, don't venture into the market with your own money. Ask somebody to sort of support your idea. I think that's very, very important. Okay, generally, it is some kind of a safety net that you are having for yourself. Nothing wrong in it. Okay, now when you talk about the money is required for everything. Okay, money is required for developing the product. Money is required for reaching to the market, right? So everything money is required. Now, the problem with money is that if you sort of bring too much of money from outside, okay, the person who does not have a sense of technology will sit in the driver's seat and then start asking every quarter whether there is a profit, and that's not going to sort of help you. This is not going to tell you. I told you about the patience. Okay, so this does not go with the fundamental idea of patience. Okay. On the other hand, if you don't have money, you cannot develop a product, you cannot go to the market, because unless you go and tell the people in the market that I have a product of this kind, how would they know about it? Okay, so money is important, but at the same time, you should, but now there is no magic rule to tell you that this is what you should get from outside, and this is the kind of shareholding you have to give to somebody who is prepared to support your venture. Okay, I think that's a judgment that you need to make for yourself. Okay, so money is a very, very important component. And finally, the fifth one is again market. Okay, why do I say market? The first market was more to do with when you start up your understanding of the market. But now you have understood that you have caught hold of men who are motivated. Now you have also caught hold of somebody, some venture capitalist who is prepared to fund your initiative, right? Fund your initiative, and now you have to actually prove yourself in the market. Okay. See, in fact, my father used to tell me, okay, the nice thing about basically, like, if you really look at our careers, okay, we are at different places, maybe in an academic institution, an organization. So we all keep talking about nepotism, people getting into group, and somebody who is actually good, he is not being allowed to perform as well, and so on and so forth. So my father used to tell me, look, when you are actually playing on a football ground, okay, who plays well and who doesn't play well, okay, it is seen outside. Okay, so basically, on a football ground, when you are playing football, right, you cannot project yourself as somebody who is good when you are actually not. It's not possible. So the market is a place like a football ground. Please remember, market is like a place like a football ground. If you are good, you sustain. If you are not good, you won't sustain, right? So it is extraordinarily important for you to maintain all that I talked about, the quality and so on and so forth, all that paraphernalia that is required for. So the market, you have to you have to play an ethical game, and you have to sort of compete with everyone else and prove yourself. Okay, and going to market, your business strategy, it also depends. There is no unique single mantra for this. It depends on your product. Okay, for example, it depends on whether your business transactions are going to be fewer or going to be enormous. So depending on that, I think your market reach also should be different. But only thing I would say is that, bottom line, which is true for everything these days, you have excellent networking possibilities because of the internet. Okay, I think use it as much as possible. Okay, so let me see, like I think there are a few other things which I might like to tell, but it's already 12:20. Okay, so I will close it now. Okay, I will close it now, and possibly I will take questions from the audience. Okay, if at all there is one thing that I would like to further add, is that academic institutions can play a very important role in these startups. Okay, so many of your own good students, okay, can actually give leadership in the startups. Quite often, they do not get proper guidance, okay, because of which it does not. Because when you are young, you are bubbling with ideas, okay. I think that is the time when you have to really sort of, venture and then do this. And apart from this, you spend 2 to 3 years in a startup, and it fizzles out. You don't lose much of your career also. So from that point of view, so the young students, who are at the age of about 21, 22, they are the ones who can actually give leadership in the startups. I'm not going to elaborate. There are many things which can be said. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but I will conclude now. Right? Please remember the 4 or 5 M's that I talked about. Okay. So we talked about the market, men, motivation, money, and market. Okay. So please keep this in mind, and I can throw the session for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. Very nice narration of what has happened. So there are two possibilities. The audience can raise the hand. We will unmute you so that you can throw your questions. That's option one. And connecting and other things, we cannot take much questions. But in the meantime, you can type on the chat box so that we can able to take it up one by one. That is the easiest mode. Very brief questions you can type on the chat box. In the meantime, I will throw one question so that people can type, and Mr. Raghuram also has raised. I will connect to you, sir, after this question. See, you have been doing, as a faculty, you have been teaching. IISc being a research-based institution, we have got good research scholars. You have been doing quality research. But when you move from this thought, research publication, from this perspective to this entrepreneurship perspective, what point of time you have shifted, and what thought process were there that has made this shift?
So it is something to do with what I sort of was telling about market, men, and motivation. I think that is what is the three things. Okay, so there was my student, was my first student, Dr. Nikhil Shande. When he came out with a degree, okay, we knew that there is something that we have done unique. Okay, it was very clear to us. Okay, although I would say that we had not completely understood all the dimensions of the development that we had made. Okay, but a significant part of it, I think we had actually understood, and I thought that this has some place in the market. Okay, now when this rudimentary thought was running in my mind, it was not, I had not done a market survey and all that. This is some kind of an intuitive feeling. But what we did was we looked at what is happening in this particular area, computational fluid dynamics. At that point in time, I think if I do not know how many of you know, in '98, India decided to go for this nuclear testing. Okay, immediately after the nuclear test, okay, there were many doomsday sayers that, oh, India has been thrown in political isolation, the world will not touch India and all that. All these statements did not even stay for even 6 months, 1 year. Okay, I would always cherish the statement which Abdul Kalam had made. In fact, he used to tell that strength respects strength. So now what you have to do, if you have to be respected, is become strong. Okay, how you become strong is a different thing, but become strong by whatever means it is required. Become strong. So at that point in time, there were many sanctions. So there was also an impulse in us. Who are these guys to sort of put sanctions and say that deny technology to our space and defense organizations? Okay. So this was also running. This was not the only thing, because I want to emphasize that it was not the only thing. It is not just an emotional reaction. It was not the only thing. We also looked at the market, and then we said that, look, there is a potential. Okay. And fortunately for us, at that point in time, okay, I think startups were still very new at that point in time. I do not know how many of you know, way back in 2003, 2004, startups were not known. Now we are talking about all that. So our institute had a program, okay, for the startups. So I talked to the institute management, and they were more than willing. Without the support of the institute, I don't think we would have been able to accomplish what we have been able to do. So it is about the like-minded men coming together. Okay, then there is a purpose. There is a very definite purpose that would be served in the market. We were convinced at that point in time, and that conviction is even there today. Our conviction has actually grown because we have also seen the market. Okay, and of course, more than anything else, there was a motivation. Okay, yeah, I think that's how it always gets started.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. One Mr. Vijay has raised the hand. Vijay, we have unmuted you. Now you can ask your question. Vijay, over to Vijay.
Can you please enable the chat box? It has been disabled by the host. If you could enable it, other participants can also type their questions. So my question is that,
sir, host, please kindly enable the chat box option. Yeah, Vijay,
yes,
please,
sir.
your questions, please.
Yeah. Yes, sir. My question is, we are trying conformal mapping for designing of airfoils, sir. So during the closure of the airfoil, we are facing a problem. Is there any technique to resolve that? The second question is that we are using, Fluent as a commercial package for solving rotational behavior of wind turbines. There we are facing over prediction of results. Should we go for blocking and hexa meshing, or we can go for unstructured meshing solvers?
Okay, it has more to do with the CFD. Okay, I will answer this question. As far as the conformal mapping for airfoil, generating the airfoil is concerned, okay, of course, if the trailing edge thickness is zero, very rarely you will have a zero thickness in a practical problem. Okay, so you need to sort of appropriately cut the trailing edge and have a finite thickness out of it. I think that's what is the realistic airfoil, and whatever simulations that you do should be for that. And as far as the NACA series airfoils are concerned, there are the ways and means by which this is accomplished. Okay, this is part one. Second thing, when you are talking about an unsteady calculations, you are talking about a wind turbine. When you are talking about an unsteady calculations, I suppose that you are making use of multi-block grid, okay, multi-block grid, or something like a rotating zone and a stationary zone. And generally, as a principle, it will be good if you can generate a what people call as a structured grid. Okay, the reason why I'm saying that is that when you are generating solutions for this kind of unsteady problems, it is very important that the solution is less dissipative. Okay, and and if you use something like an unstructured mesh, quite often it may be easy to generate an unstructured mesh, but your solution quality may not be as good. Okay, so you have to. It will be better if you can actually generate a multi-block structured grid. And the second thing is that you should be able to run the code in the second order accuracy, both in the spatial and the time mode. Okay, otherwise your solutions are not going to be good. Okay, for example, generally what I have seen with most of the commercial tools is that if you switch on both the spatial and time accuracy to second order, the robustness of the code would suffer, apart from the fact that it won't scale and all that. Okay, robustness of the code would suffer, and generally people sort of feel happy to reduce the accuracy to first order and then run the code, and that's when we see the difficulties with the accuracy. Okay, so as far as this kind of problems are concerned, we routinely do it with our hyphen solver. We routinely do it. For example, we are doing calculations for propeller flows. You must have seen aircrafts with propellers. We use very routinely for the propeller flows, and we have excellent numbers. Okay, so accuracy as such is not an issue. Okay, only thing is that when you are running your code, people find, particularly in the commercial space, people find that their accuracy, robustness suffers, and therefore sort of reduce the accuracy. And therefore, once you sort of get to first order kind of a calculation, you will not be able to get the right numbers. So that's what generally happens. If I do not know if I have answered your question, I think that's the way it is.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. Otherwise, you can privately mail to him. He may do the needful. Next, Kumaran Harish. Kumaran Harish, we have unmuted you. You can post your question. Kumaran, you can ask. Kumaran, நீங்க இப்ப பேசலாம். I think he has playfully raised a hand. Over to Bala, there are few questions in the chat box. Mr. Deepankar is asking, how can the knowledge of research help an entrepreneur?
See, as Srinivasan pointed out, research is one thing, okay, but it is not necessary that all that we call as research should end up in a product, okay. So you need to be very careful, okay. See, research, as I told you, the research is novelty driven, whereas the business is product driven. Your product should be required in the market. Okay, so definitely when you do research, you can arrive at a product which is good in quality, okay, which stands out, which has a unique USP of its own, okay, which can be differentiated from its products from its competitors. So that is how research would help. Okay, but again, one thing that people should appreciate is that research is a complete ballgame. I think this is what Dr. Srinivasan was also trying to indicate at the beginning. Research is a different ballgame. But now, when you have a product resulting from research, okay, it speaks for itself. The product is good. Okay, if you really look at our Sandy logo, you will see the logo reads, it's a product of research. Okay, which means that the quality is assured. Okay, I think that's one of the very, very important things. Okay, but again, one thing that I would always tell is that as a researcher we have a mindset. Okay, but when you have a product, okay, now there is an issue which comes up. Let's suppose there's an issue which comes up because of your mindset. You may be driven in the same track as you do research. Okay, I think you should be careful about doing it, because I have seen people while doing business. I think you should be completely conscious that you are doing business. Okay, if you start doing research in your product while doing business, you will lose out very badly. Okay, so that is only till a time that you bring the product to the market. But once it is there in the market, you have to obey the rules of the market, right? You can have research as a in the back end. Okay, you can have research in the back end. It's very important. Okay, because it continuously sort of allows your product to evolve. But when you have a product, the product is not dictated by research. The product is dictated by its value in the market. Okay, I'll give you a simple example. When we do the version control for our code, okay, right? Between two versions, a lot of research goes on. Okay, but between those two versions, let's suppose that we have hyphen 4.2. Let's say that. Okay, and when we are in the market with 4.2, and there is a requirement for what is happening in the backend in the research. Okay, we will not say that okay, fine, some research work is going on, we will complete it and give you this product. We will tell them that 4.2 is available to you whether it interests you. Okay, we will not say that there is a research going on. We know that, but because the timescales involved in research, timescales involved in your business are very different. You cannot match them. Only when you are lucky you can possibly match them. So always keep it in mind. It helps you, but fundamentally, if your question is how does research help, it helps you in bringing out a good product, quality product. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. I'd like to add one small dimension to this. When I attended a 4 weeks faculty development program on entrepreneurship, we have to undergo this training, and we have to train our students as entrepreneurs at EDI Ahmedabad in 1995 itself. They have been repeatedly telling, if you want to sell a product, three things are important. Technically, it must be feasible. Economically or market-wise, it must be sellable. I mean, viable price-wise. And socially, it must be acceptable. So in research, we take care only the first part, technical feasibility. Yes, and we publish. But whether we can able to convert this as a product and sell at the market acceptable prices,
yes,
and still make a profit.
Understanding market is important. Yes.
Yes. And it must be socially acceptable, because if a fluid like solver is being very highly accepted by everyone, when I put a similar product, it won't help. So there must be specific USP that differentiates my product from a commonly available one. So another interesting question. Hi, sir. Can you explain the role of CFD in rocket design, especially MiG-21 aircrafts?
So we are actually using it in a big way. Okay, not just MiG-21, we are using it for, actually hyphen is used for Su-30, Mirage, LCA, the Tejas, right? And also several other programs, the missile programs, right? And also the launch vehicle programs. See, everywhere, CFD finds its use everywhere. As I told you, in VSSC, ADE, ADA, then many of the DRDO labs, LRD, a whole lot of them. Okay, they make use of the hyphen data. I think hyphen is integral part of all these national programs.
Sir Muniraj, you can feedback link, you can host there, keep on asking. Kindly monitor the chat box. Bala, one interesting question. Sir, as a teacher, when I like to take up research in the area of computational fluid dynamics, what are the certain guidelines or tips that you can give to us?
CFD, I think it depends on what. See, generally when people talk about CFD, I think, okay. Okay, I'm also keeping the chat box on. Okay, there's something interesting which has come up. I will also address that. Okay, so basically when I'm talking about CFD, we should be clear what we want to do. Okay, whether you want to develop algorithms or whether you want to apply the CFD. So basically, when I look at myself, I'm basically a person who develops algorithms. Okay, and when I develop algorithms, what I thought was that how would my algorithms, how do I know? By applying it. So that is how I got into applications. By nature, I am not an algorithms person. Okay, by training rather. By training, I am not an algorithms person. But I have, I'm sorry, by training, I am an algorithms person. I'm not an applied person. But I have actually applied what we have developed. So that is the way it comes. Okay, so basically, I think you should be clear about what you want, algorithms or the applications. Now, when you talk about applications, you don't have the hassle of developing solvers and all. These days, many commercial tools are available, right? And it becomes like more like what experimentalists would do. Okay, so you should decide what you want, whether you want to address, say, for example, in aerospace CFD, whether you want to address minimizing the drag on an aircraft, or you want to address issues like the flow control, okay, or you want to address some intricate flow phenomenon. I think that choice is yours, depending on what you do. Okay, this is true for, you can extend it for every other automotive CFD, in other industrial CFD, and so on and so forth. So basically, if you are working on algorithms, you should actually be very clear about this is what is the present day tool, CFD tool can offer. What is it that I can offer more than what is there today? Okay, so you have to push the limits of applicability of the CFD continuously by the way of making it more accurate, more robust, more scalable. See, for example, if you today, if you can get a real good data parallel algorithm for CFD, it will be a wonderful thing. Okay, it will be a wonderful thing. Right? Distributed memory framework, people understand it very well. There's no big deal, right? When I started, it was a big challenge. But now, to get a good data parallel CFD tool is so it depends on what you want to do. Whether you want to sort of contribute on the algorithm, but more or less, I have seen that general appreciation of CFD is in terms of applying the CFD. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. One Mr. Rajkumar is on the line. Rajkumar, we have unmuted you. You can ask your question. Mr. Rajkumar. Oh, Rajkumar. Okay. Rajkumar, you would like to ask? Okay. Bala, there is one question. Recently, there are a good number of MiG-21 Russian aircrafts are facing accidents. Is there anything wrong?
I answered that question. Last question was that. Yeah, because that was the question. The next question was on the piracy. So somebody was asking whether piracy is an issue. Actually, it is good that you are asking this question, okay? Because as a nation, I think we should, we should become aware of some of these issues, okay? See, in the US, the way it works is that innovation is encouraged, okay? For example, I was just looking at what is called as, I do not know, Philips has come with what is called as an air fryer. I do not know how many of you have really seen that. You can give a web search and then see. It is a beautiful piece of equipment. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. If you really look at the inside of an air fryer, you can see the kind of aerodynamics that goes with it. The way the bottom surface is contoured to provide a swim to the air, hot air, okay? Right? It essentially sort of replaces frying with oil, okay, which is more from the health point of view. So I was looking at this beautiful piece of equipment. So now, if an air fryer is made in the US for the next 20 years, okay, the innovation is protected. On the other hand, if you really look at our country, okay, because we don't have the, what is referred to as product patenting, right? The moment an air fryer kind of a product comes into the market, in 3 months, there will be somebody who is actually copying it and then bringing yet another product, which may be even better than the original product. I think this is something that scuttles innovation. I think we should move now, because I have a feeling we have extraordinary talents within the country. There are actually, I know that there are both arguments in favor of product patenting and against. I know that. Okay, I'm not getting into those details. But what is important is that as a nation, we should move into an innovative nation. Okay, that's what again our Prime Minister is actually talking about. We should move into in a domain where we become innovative. Okay. Now, because there is this issue, what you are talking about is a very live issue. As far as software is concerned, okay, what we have done for our solver, I will tell you, it is about M, the second M, the men. Okay, we developed CFD too, but we are not people who are good in developing IT tools. So basically, we have taken help of yet another entrepreneur from the institute. Okay, who is very good in doing things like developing the licensing software. So hyphen license is not easy to break. Okay, I can challenge that. It's not easy to break. Okay, so we have been able to sort of stay in the market. There is no issue about piracy. So it is about the right kind of people coming together. So that's why I always say that you should complement one another's abilities. Yeah.
Bala, one last question, very interesting question. How to develop an ecosystem in engineering institutions to guide students to become entrepreneurs, faculty as a part of the team like you?
Okay, this is a very good question. Okay, first thing is that the most important thing, okay, management should support. I think particularly for organization like KIT, with person like Srinivasan at the helm, I think that's not an issue. Okay, so management support alone is not good enough. People should be motivated. I will again and again come back to only these M's. Okay, people should be motivated. I think that's extremely important. The faculty members should really sort of take up on themselves. Look, we have been teaching courses, we have been giving grades, okay, and all that is happening. But let us do something more than that. Okay, so they should be prepared to soil their hands. Okay, this is the second thing. Okay, because who are the people who are going to be really interfacing with the students? The faculty members. Okay, and then the students. Actually, what I found was that getting these first two is very difficult. The good management and motivated faculty member, because what happens is that most of the faculty members, they quite often what happens is that I will come and teach, I will come at 9 o'clock, go back at 4 o'clock, I have something else to take care after post 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, okay, and I am happy as I am, so things will not move. Okay, there are people who should be prepared to drive the program. That drive comes from the faculty members. As far as the third component is the students are very enthusiastic, provided you give them an opportunity to do that. Okay, they will come up with ideas. So old people cannot come up with ideas. It's the youngsters who come up with ideas. Allow them, give them the space. Okay, and support them in a small way. Okay, you will start very quickly seeing wonders happening. Okay, but again, what is very important is patience. Okay, patience is extremely important. I have seen that, on an average, in the present day society, there is a lack of patience. Okay, you do something and you expect the result tomorrow. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That if it happens, you are lucky. Okay, that's the way I would put it. Yes, Srinivasan.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. Thank you for the nice questions. I think it's time for us to say bye-bye, and a lot of appreciation and things. People have really loved this session. And last one also, there are a good number of people, they have seen your talk on the YouTube. There were about some 300 plus views.
Okay.
Really, this is again another new dimension for us. So thank you, Bala. Thank you, so kind of you. And we'll meet in another occasion.
Thanks, Srinivasan, for the opportunity. And all the best from my end for you and your organization and your great team.
Yes, Bala. Thank you. So, dear participants, we have a next lecture in the series is by Dr. R. Jayawale. He is a very excellent researcher. and he has got so many awards in research. I have got about 20 240 plus research publications, and he is a very good person to teach down to earth. So innovative research, the need of the hour, is his first talk. The second talk is on art of writing the quality research paper and publishing in the reputed journal and getting more citations. So these were slotted on 23rd of July, that is next week Thursday at 11 a.m. And the second talk of Dr. Jayvel is on 37, 37, and it is both of them are at 11 a.m. So kindly join, and I'll be adding 2 more talks to the beginner level. And with all these things, I think we have started with the request of our many engineering college faculty members. They wanted a webinar on outcome-based education and NB accreditation, because government has made it mandatory now by 2023 that all institutions must get accreditation. It was a huge success. About 800 to 1,000 participants joined every day. Followed by polytechnics wanted across Tamil Nadu. There are about 150 polytechnics, 1,200 faculty have attended. That these two are 5-day sessions. Subsequently, there was a request came from many faculty that now in the appraisal process, 2 publications per faculty is being made mandatory. We need to start somewhere. Why don't you help? In fact, there is a necessity for our own faculty members also. Then I thought, let us put one webinar more fundamentally on how to start a research. So that way, one is the experimental part. We need instrumentation. That's a key. That's where Dr. Muthukumar has come in. And on the soft computing part, the CFD plays a very vital role. That's where Bala is there. And his second talk is one more thing. What the need of the hour is patents, products, technology transfer. So that dimension also added. Having the realized these 2 dimensions, now we will move on to really how to identify a research problem, how to do a literature survey, how to extract a problem, whether the problem is worth about publishing 3 to 4 papers, what kind of research methodology shall we do, experimental or a thing, what combination that will really help, and while doing research, what kind of issues you as a researcher you may face. All these things based on our vast experience we will be sharing, Dr. Jayvel and myself. So please join in this webinars. Now we, on behalf of everyone, we thank Bala. Over to Muniraj for Bala. Any final words you like to add?
I think no, no, it's fine.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. We all say very best, all the best to you, because making a software of this caliber and international and competing with international player is not an ordinary job. And you are modest that you are not projected that. Anyway, it's a pride for India, because now import substitution and indigenization is in need of the hour. So that way you made our nation proud. Thank you, Bala. Over to Muniraj for further formal closing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving the brief introduction on forthcoming webinar session. And thank you, Bala sir, also. A nice talk on how to innovate in research. Thank you, sir. Now the forum is handed over to Manivandan for giving the vote of thanks. Over
Yes,
to
sir.
Manivandan.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm audible, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
audible, Manivandan.
Yes, sir. So, a very good afternoon to one and all present here. It is my great pleasure to propose vote of thanks in this occasion. First of all, I would like to thank our today's resource person, Dr.N.Balakrishnan, Professor, Department of Aerospace Engineering, IISc Bangalore, for delivering his lecture on CFT research and from research and technology innovation to entrepreneurship. During your talk, really the concept of 5M was so unique, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Next, we are thankful to you, to our principal, Dr. PSS Srinivasan, sir, for his words of encouragement to organize this kind of event. Thank you, sir. Next, I thank Vice Principal, Dr. K. Visagavel, KOT, for giving his support for us ever in all the aspects. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to thank the webinar coordinators, Dr. C. Muniraj, Professor and Head EEE, and Dr. N. Sandhya Kumari, Professor and Head EC, for their valuable support. Thank you, sir and madam. Next, I thank all the heads of the department, directors of KIOT, and director of KBSS. Finally, I thank the webinar organizing team and admin team for their sincere effort, and also thank all the participants of various institutions who have actively participated in this session. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for the opportunity given. Over to coordinator, sir.
Thank you, Manivan. So
Thank you, sir.
once again, thanks for all joining this. So now we will going to end this webinar, sir.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir. Now we are going to end this webinar. Thank you for joining.
Bye. Bye, all of you. Bye.
See you, brother. Bye.